Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Partially Scientific, the overhyped and extremely ambitious podcast created by PJ Rollins. My guest today is Sam Lehman, friend, peer, and all-around good dude. He and I will investigate the most outlandish historical figures that we could gather in this inaugural episode of Partially Scientific. We begin our episode with Mansa Musa, famously known as the richest person in history, a man whose wealth was so large there's no way to actually put an accurate number on his wealth. After coming to power, Mansa Musa was dedicated towards making his country a Muslim country, ordering the construction of numerous mosques around his nation, and after that, he decided that he was going to start a pilgrimage to Mecca. He took off on the journey with 20,000 men, 12,000 slaves, and a line of camels that was so long it was said to stretch from horizon to horizon.
So was this the original march to Mecca? Has this been done before?
I think it had been done before, and he was just doing it to sort of establish his nation, Mali, as a well-developed Muslim nation, as at the time the Muslim world was seen as the center of culture and science. Mm-hmm. So he was really focusing on modernizing his country.
So did this trip to Mecca, was this the one that popularized it and made it the trip, like the pilgrimage that we see the Muslims taking today? Or was this already popularized?
It was already around.
Mm-hmm.
But Mansa Musa really took it to the next level and beyond.
So it was like the pimpier pilgrimage, pretty much.
It was the pimpiest pilgrimage in the history of all pilgrimages. There was the 12,000 slaves carried numerous 4-pound gold bars, and there were 80 camels that carried around 50 to 300 pounds of gold dust. And along the route from Mali, which is on the northwest sort of area of Africa, to Mecca, which is in the Middle East, around every single city that he would pass through with his men and camels, they would toss out gold to the peasants, effectively crippling the gold market in all of North Africa for an area of around 10 years. So this man was so rich, he single-handedly influenced the market on gold, something that no human has ever done since. On his journey as well, it was said that he would build a mosque every Friday on his journey. So every Friday, wherever he was, he'd stop, get everyone together, build a mosque, keep trucking.
Now they would finish the mosque to completion. I'm guessing it wasn't this ornate,
I think
beautiful structure. I'm sure it was more of like a symbolic mosque.
Well, with 12,000 men, I'm pretty sure.
Do you think would they finish it in one day? Do you think?
I don't think it'd be super ornate, but I think it'd be pretty sizable.
Do you think they got all those slaves together, just whipped them up, and got that done in a day?
Manpower is surprisingly efficient.
That's true.
So he shows up to Mecca, does his pilgrimage, and while he's there, he scoops up a few hundred architects, engineers, scientists, and says, "You're coming with me. We're just gonna revolutionize Mali."
Just your casual trip.
Yeah. So on the way back, he gets word that he may or may not have crashed the gold market, and he realizes that this has been a mistake. So he has so much money, he starts borrowing gold back from people and giving them like insane investment rates. So he tries to restabilize the market. God. So this man is just absurdly rich. And not only that, he's modernizing his country in one go. So he gets back to Mali, distributes the architects, the engineers, builds a library, the second greatest behind the Library of Alexandria, which taught anywhere up to 20,000 students at a time. So he really brought his country into the 15th century. So that kind of wraps up Mansa Musa. He died, and it's not really known how he died, but after that, I think his son took the throne, and then Mali kind of fell over time. But Mansa Musa, definitely Mali's most famous historical figure.
Where did he amass his wealth from? Just being a king, being a
great
ruler,
being a king. He was only king for 25 years. But
not a bad run.
Africa, as we well know, is extremely rich in natural resources. Yeah. So just being able to mine up all the gold in Mali certainly helped him on the way.
I'm sure.
So Sam, I believe you have a historical figure for us?
I have some good ones. I have some great ones, PJ. So I'm going to start with Claudius, a great leader of the fourth emperor of the Roman Empire. And with my guys, I decided to really go on the more bloodthirsty, crazy side. And these guys are almost like your archetypal villains, PJ. They started off with Claudius, who had all sorts of physical deformities, and this is what actually made people believe that he was such a crazy man, because modern scientists, modern historians believe that he was a sufferer from cerebral palsy, and which caused him to foam at the mouth, to shake, to stammer, and this physical deformity really actually caused him to be ostracized from his family, from when he was a child. He was called an abomination. His own mother said that he was a mistake from God who forgot to finish him. His sister said that she believed that he was a goblin and a monster up until the age of around 18, where he actually seemed like he was a member of society. So, because they were a wealthy family, they were a popular family, and they all went into politics. But because poor Claudius was such a sick, weak little, loner, he wasn't put into the family game until much later on in his life. And again, with this, even though he wasn't mentally ill, he wasn't raised mentally ill, but being secluded and told that you're different is gonna make you crazy. And he's often told that he would fantasize about murdering everyone, and that's not like just a generalization. The quote is everyone. He didn't specify everyone on Earth, everyone in his family. We have no idea, but he definitely was a very powerful ruler of the Roman Empire, and his love for bloodshed definitely helped that, because as we have back in those ancient times, that this quest for domination was really started with a bloodlust. He was reported to have this like obsession and this almost kind of like really, really, really strange love affair with the gladiator games. And it was shown that if he was to be interrupted during one of these horrible massacres in the stadium, he would have that person interrupted him executed themselves. So we just have this man who just went on this absolute tirade, and he took several steps to legitimize his rule. Quoting, he adopted the name Caesar, and the name was able to still carry great weight with the populace. And again, we just see all of these ways where Claudius just took on his role as an emperor, and he was actually not really one of the more intellectual of them as well. He really was one of those rulers that was just really forceful, and almost you can imagine him with the foam in the corners of his mouth, shaking, stammering, screaming to murder people. Again, I mean, that does carry some weight as with a monarchy, as a dictator, and so he definitely was one of these guys who truly was effective and great at his job because of his genuine insanity.
All right, so how did he exactly come to power? Because I kind of remember, or my Latin teacher telling me about how everyone was being murdered around him.
Oh yeah, he kind of ended up just popping up. Really,
okay.
It was because
was he just like wandering around the palace, and everyone else was murdering each other, and he was just the last one left?
I mean, that's kind of a very general way to put it, but honestly, in a sense, yes. He was not really this big, highfalutin character. His family was rather wealthy. He went into politics. But yes, this was during a time where just absolute mayhem and just pandemonium was overtaking the Roman Senate. And the just power was being constantly transferred. And there was this just complete, absolute, just kind of craziness where people were just being murdered left and right.
So how long did his rule last, do you know?
I don't know, but I think it was pretty long, and I think he was murdered. A lot of these guys, their deaths are kind of like, a lot of them with yours are kind of unknown, but Claudius was always very, like many crazy dictators are, he was always very paranoid, especially given how he came to power. Mm-hmm. He was always very, very, very scared of being assassinated and being murdered. So that was definitely another cause for his super almost this like oversensitivity to any dissenters.
All right, we're gonna move on now to
I think we can
everyone's favorite.
Oh boy, who?
Dutch astronomer Tycho Brahe.
Oh, look at that mustache. For the folks at home, this is just.
He looks vaguely related to Jamie Heineman, the one who wears a beret on Mythbusters, this mustache extends at around...
The Lorax would be envious of this mustache. I will tell you that. The man is a stunner, people.
So, not only is he everyone's favorite 16th century Dutch astronomer, he's also a member of the royal family. So this man is absolutely loaded. Like my previous guy, Mansa Musa, Tycho Brahe was extremely wealthy. At one point, his wealth was approximately 1% of all the money in Denmark. So you get your politicians like Bernie Sanders always yelling about the 1%. Tycho Brahe was 1%.
Literally,
1%.
He himself
had 1% of the money in the country, which is absolutely crazy.
That sounds like a socialist hellscape to me, PJ.
What did Tycho Brahe do with this money? Not only did he buy a ton of astronomical equipment, do an absolute buttload of research, and record the very data that allowed his protege Johannes Kepler to set out the rules of motion and create the first real true heliocentric model of the solar system. He also bought a pet elk, had a dwarf that he hired to tell the future.
Like a dwarf.
Like a
little person.
Like a little person. So his name was Jep.
Jep, J-E-P?
J-E-P-P. And Jep was hired or bought, depending on the source. Slavery was still in that legal gray area at the time.
I think bought would be a proper assumption to make.
Tycho kind of made Jep hang around the palace, and Jep was not allowed to eat at the table because Tycho was kind of crazy.
What, they gave him a dog bowl? Did he eat with the elk?
No. He had to eat underneath the table.
Underneath the table?
Kind of like in a footstool sort of manner. Oh my gosh. So already Tycho's kind of an eccentric. And on top of this, Tycho believed that Jep had some sort of psychic powers.
Jep did, or Tycho?
So Jep.
Oh gosh.
Jep had psychic powers. So Tycho would ask Jep about his future, about what would happen to him, and just a whole manner of crazy things. So, moving on to other things that Tycho owned. The
More
pet
people?
elk/moose, depending on how you translate it. Tycho bought an elk/moose and just kind of kept it around the palace for fun.
Like in a stable or paddock, or just around the palace? No,
just hung out. It just walked around.
In the hall, in the ballroom?
Yeah, it just chilled, went up and down the stairs, had a super fun time.
Oh my gosh.
And one day, there was a local, or a nearby noble who said, Tycho, we need some entertainment at the party. Can you lend us your elk? And Tycho, having all the money in the world, just goes, sure, dude. Here's an elk. Have a ball.
Because, what says a rager like an elk?
Oh, dude.
That's how you demonstrate.
Talk about a real stag party.
Oh, my gosh. This is like the equivalent of like Mike Tyson's like white tiger. This is the white tiger
this elk was the life of the party.
Oh my gosh!
It got absolutely hammered. They fed this thing so much beer, it got up a set of stairs, and was too drunk to get down. Stumbled down and died.
Gosh.
So
poor Tycho.
Talk about something that totally is just a party foul. A dead elk in the middle of the party.
Here's my question. Did Jep forewarn them of this?
I don't know.
Did Jep know?
If Jep foretold the death of the elk, oh my god, I would be amazed. But we've got to do some digging and get to the bottom of this death.
You think Tycho would have consulted Jep before making such a decision to give his elk to this party? You would imagine he would go, Jep, hey buddy. Is anything? Am I making the right choice?
Jep was more involved with major life choices like investments, but I could see Tycho going to Jep and saying, "Jep, can I loan out my elk for the night?"
But clearly he didn't, though, because Jep would have warned him.
Jep would have known.
Such a demise.
Jep, the psychic dwarf. So, on top of this, Tycho was also an infamous womanizer.
To the point of where that kind of goes without saying.
Yeah, he got into 2 duels with friends and third cousins over women while he was at college.
No second cousins?
Just the third. He had a nice buffer zone in there. So he got involved with a third cousin's girlfriend. Mm-hmm. And as you do, you challenge him to a sword duel for who gets the woman.
That's true.
And in this sword duel, Tycho lost the battle, but not only the battle, he lost the tip of his nose. So here's a Dutch noble cruising around without the tip of his nose. And typical Tycho, he gets into another duel over another woman around 2 years later and has a duel once more, this time in the dark.
In the dark?
Why in the dark?
Was that like a special like setting or game mode that they wanted to play?
I guess it's just sort of spice things up.
Just to make things more interesting?
Make it a bit more interesting.
Was his opponent blind and they wanted to even the playing field?
I have no idea, but I mean, talk about wonderful ideas where absolutely nothing can go wrong. Mm-hmm. Sword duels in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
And in this sword duel, Tycho lost the rest of his nose.
The rest of his nose?
So what do you do as a Dutch noble? Get a replacement nose made out of brass.
Brass?
So he's got like this golden nose looking thing on him for the rest of his life. And it makes him kind of an icon.
That's kind of a fashion statement, yeah.
It is very much a fashion statement. So Tycho does a few weird things. And the way that he dies is absolutely outlandish. Tycho's at a party, partying it up, just raging so hardcore, he doesn't even have time to go to the bathroom. And this man dies of a burst bladder. Talk about a party animal.
That's true.
He was so dedicated to the rage that he didn't even try to go pee. And that everyone thought like, oh, maybe he died of mercury poisoning. Because, this man was also an alchemist in his early years.
Yep.
I mean, talk about lifestyles of the rich and famous. Alchemy, own a dwarf, pet elk, be an astronomer in your spare time, brass nose. This man is the image of luxury in the 16th century. That pretty much wraps up Tycho Brahe. Not only did he have an amazing contribution to science and the understanding of the solar system, he was also an absolute legend.
Now, if we're talking about legends, how can you talk about legends without the infamous Vlad the Impaler, or as he's officially known as Vlad the Third, Dracula?
Oh.
Yes, for anyone wondering, there is a relationship between this last name and the famous vampire that we all know so well. So let's get into Vlad for a little bit. Again, with my obsession with insanity, we have another absolutely insane person. A complete maniac. Not a party maniac like our friend Tycho, but just a sinister sadist. Completely through and through. This man was so powerful when he was ruling the Ottoman Empire. And no, not the chairs. The empire itself.
That was low.
Yeah.
That was low.
So he was ruling first, he and again, we have this man, and we have the Middle East. We have, again, these guys are generally much more based around military campaigns. So yes, he did just absolutely insane conquests just all over the Middle East. And actually, he was just using so much of the resources on the military and just completely denying, if we're going with the slogan of Bernie again, completely denying the 99%, that he was exiled, came back for a second go. The people decided to give him a second chance of ruling this whole place.
That's just
and
wonderful.
And this is where things get spicy, because what happened was Vlad did not see the first exile coming. He did not notice the stirrings, the political stirrings amongst his ranks that eventually led to him being kicked out. So coming back, Vlad thought he'd do things a little differently. Now, I'd like to keep in mind that he was always a nutter. He was always a wacky dude, pretty crazy, pretty sinister. He was a military guy, he was known for charging into battle with his men, like 3 swords in hand. Like, he would take the weapons of...
How do you even do that? You're just like multitasking.
I'm just quoting here. I'm reading 3 swords in hand. And he would take his weapons from his other men to further fight the battle. So, again, this guy's already crazy. And it's not like the exile made him crazy, which I'm sure it insinuated the circumstances. But he comes back, and he is furious. He is just... he doesn't got that little twinkle in his eye anymore of like he doesn't have the third hell of this. He doesn't have the three swords into battle whimsy anymore. He is now just a straight up menace.
So is it time to purge and all political dissenters?
He is about to purge like a madman, and he did it in the most insane way possible. He wouldn't go Night of the Long Knives Hitler style, just obviously just running around with his goons, killing everyone. He would invite them to dinner. A little old Vlad's dinner parties were infamous. Not for the way that Tycho Brahe's were, but for the way that almost no one would leave alive.
Talk about a bait and switch.
He really would. So what he would do is he would take so say there was 3-4 people in amongst his ranks who were suspicious of him, who weren't sure, who were maybe would say speak illy of him, depending on what they were. So say they were a military leader, let's say general, and that general was in charge of however many men. He would invite that general and then all of his men to dinner, because it does make sense a little bit if you think about it, but it is still crazy. Because logically, if this general is speaking illy of Vlad, then there's a possibility that he is doing it, that those feelings of dissent are being trickled down to his ranks, and so meaning he would be fearful of this, saying if this leader isn't trusting me or doesn't like me, then how are his followers disloyal to me as well? So he would have these massive banquets, and of course at this time, these guys had even more insane wealth than like these French monarchs that how society sees like modern monarchs. Like we kind of don't talk about like the Mansa Musas and these guys who had even more insane wealth. So he would have these banquet halls of thousands of people, and basically what would happen was one by one they would just be picked off.
How?
Stabbed.
By who?
Stabbed by guards.
Oh my.
Throughout the dinner, they would just be stabbed. And what would happen was he would do the same thing every time. You don't have enough guards to kill 2,000 people at once. You can't just do one mass killing. There's no guns. So what he would tell people is he would say, "Oh, so-and-so was a dissenter. So-and-so didn't listen to me. Don't be like so-and-so." Don't like, and basically it was this weird psychological game where they would think that they were safe. He would kill 5 people, and they go, "Oh, and he would do it. And again, these feasts and meals lasted hours on end, so he had all the time in the world. So 5 would go, "Oh, these were just the bad bunch, the bad apples." Another 3, "Oh," and he would have these. Sometimes he would even make up reasons for why these people would be killed, until the end of the night when like 20 men would be remaining, and this is where it gets juicy, and I mean literally. He would take the still twitching bodies, direct quote, he would take the still twitching body of all these murdered men and guards and soldiers and politicians, and he would put them on, and he would impale them with stakes. And it is said, now this is what they say to be somewhat of a myth, but given what it's said that he did, it doesn't surprise me if it would be true. He would line them up outside of his palace on these large stakes with the dead twitching bodies impaled on top as sort of a message to anyone else.
Oh God.
He would have the certain men with their turbans, he would have their turbans nailed to their skulls.
That's not a good image.
And he did, so this was his main, his really, his big, like, his show. Like, that was his specialty move. The stabbing and the impaling and round and round again. But he got creative. He was an artist. He really was, PJ. He got creative with it. There's some stories of him inviting, not maybe thousands, but 50 people to dinner, and the chef would bring out a large black pan it was a pan from what I'm going to tell you, but the dinner guests would just be like, "Oh, he's bringing out this giant iron disc," and he would light a fire, and it was almost like the worst trip out to Benihana you've ever had. Just the worst. Just think about getting some uncooked shrimp from Benihana and then multiply that by 1,000, because he would then have guards grab the dinner guests and fling them onto the pan.
Oh, that's
alive.
Fun.
Alive. And feed them to the other guests who were still living. So he would take the most extreme dissenters, have them instantly murdered. The people who he suspected of murder, the people who he suspected of being dissenters, he would keep them alive and feed them the dead dissenters. So now we see clearly this lust for blood, and that is actually where people were inspired to create this Dracula character of being a bloodthirsty man. And if you want to go look at a picture of this guy too, PJ, I'll show you. He is Dracula. He's got those large, big, brown, watery eyes with just the long crook, like that long, skinny nose. So I mean, you can just see how he is the perfect person to encapsulate Dracula, because he was just an absolutely insane, bloodthirsty ruler, and he really was like one of the first, not most famous, but one of the really first modern rulers who had such intense purges like this.
So, is there any special way in which he died, or did he just kind of die of old age?
I'm pretty sure he died of old age, but it was suspected that he was poisoned. With mushrooms.
With mushrooms?
With mushrooms.
Well,
again, all this stuff is difficult because we're in the 1400s.
Yeah, not that many good records.
And that's hard when we're reporting this history to people, because we only have to go on what is supposed to have happened, and also with translations. Meaning, for example, this is one that's even like the story about the frying pan is taken to be fact.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for instance, we don't know, but being thrown in a pan could be some sort of slang or euphemism for something. We don't know in translation. So that's what's really interesting about history and with these crazy stories, because they're told to be true, but we don't exactly know.
True.
What do you got next for us, PJ?
Up next, I've got the most renowned Caribbean dictator of all time. Sam, I know a personal icon of yours, Fidel Castro.
Oh my gosh.
Not only did Fidel Castro lead the People's Revolution on the island of Cuba,
we're getting modern,
and create this is a jump. We're now in the 20th century. We've been hanging back.
We went from like 1448 to
we're jumping up. It's about a 500-year jump right here.
Nice switch. Okay.
But little may you know, Fidel Castro had an obsession with milk. Not just milk, with cheese, with ice cream, anything vaguely milk related, it was Fidel's favorite.
Is dairy or specifically milk?
I think there's dairy because there's cheese involved.
Mm-hmm.
But he was a pretty obsessed guy.
The mayor of Milkville.
You could say so.
All right.
There's a story of somebody who wrote a biography of Fidel that after one meal, Fidel Castro decided, I would like some ice cream, and proceeded to have 18 scoops of ice cream. And for those of you who spend your Saturday nights eating your feelings away on the couch with a pint of Ben & Jerry's, that's around 2 pints of Ben & Jerry's. My personal best is 1.5.
Oh, so you're getting in Castro territory
No,
yourself.
this is proof that the communists outrank the capitalists. They can consume more ice cream consumption. They're above and beyond us. We need to get America modernized right now.
I think we do. We need to get on this level of someone needs to call up Baskin Robbins and have like the Castro special.
Oh, so speaking of Baskin Robbins, 31 flavors, all that jazz. 31 Flavors is famous for having 31 flavors.
Mm-hmm.
And a long time ago, there was a ice cream company called Howard's or something like that. I will figure it out. They're called... It's something. I'll figure this out. So they had 35 flavors.
And is this in the United States,
or
is this in Cuba?
No, this is like a U.S. company.
Okay, yeah.
So this ice cream company was called Howard's. Howard Johnson's. And they had, I think, 25 flavors. They had around 25 flavors. Fidel Castro decided it is time to upstage the capitalists.
As one does.
Cuba should have 28 flavors. So Cuba's already stepping up their game.
Mm-hmm, of course.
And where do you serve these brand new Cuban 28 flavors?
I think I know.
an ultra-modern ice cream parlor that I believe is around 2 stories and takes up half a city block called Copelia.
What does that translate to?
I'm not exactly sure, but it's probably
ice cream town. Ice cream town.
I wouldn't be surprised. So, at its peak, Copelia employed 414 employees.
Oh my gosh! What are they doing? Are they making all the ice cream? Are they selling the ice cream?
Making and serving ice cream to the Cuban people.
Did he have? I forgot to ask. I thought I heard something. Did he have ice cream scientists?
I don't think he had ice cream scientists, but it had a certain type of scientist that we'll get to in just a few moments.
All right.
So at Copelia, it is an icon. It's open from 10 a.m. to 1 a.m. And people line up starting at 8 o'clock in the morning to get into line here.
To get their ice cream.
There's like 3 indoor ice cream parlors and 1 like out on a balcony. This is the most high-class ice cream parlor you will ever go to.
Your move, America.
I know. We really need to get it together. So, how do you really sustain this obsession with ice cream? You need to bring in the milk industry. Mm-hmm. You can't be buying from capitalists. That's the exact wrong thing to be doing. And unfortunately, there's only 2 types, at the time that Castro comes to power, there's only 2 types of cows in Cuba. There's zebus from India and creoles from Spain. They're both really well suited to heat, but they're not exactly that juicy in the milk department.
No. So these are not your black and white. These are
not the Holstein. These are brown and gray.
Yeah.
They look more like the water buffalo you see on planet Earth.
Oh, so ugly cows basically. So they're second rates.
Yeah, they're not exactly the milk cows. They're more for beef.
Yeah.
So Castro calls up his friends in the north. Mm-hmm. Not America, those grimy capitalist pigs. Canada, everyone's favorite neighbor.
Everyone's favorite socialists.
So he goes, Canada, we need some Holsteins. Hook it up. They buys around like a certain number of 1,000 Holsteins, brings them down, and these things are scared. They're used to Canada, which, as you know, is if a refrigerator was a country. Getting dropped into Cuba, they lose it. They are freaking out. They lose weight, and the milk production plummets. Castro goes, you know what we do? We bring the refrigerator to them. Using subsidies from the USSR, he builds a massive refrigerator building, which he keeps these cows in so they don't overheat. Even so, being kept in a refrigerator for your days is not exactly the most stress-free thing, so their milk production is still lacking. At this point, Castro realizes we need to do something. So he begins the most ambitious breeding project of all time. Create a super cow.
Oh my gosh.
Breeding the zebus, creoles, and the Holsteins, Castro hopes to create what he called the Cuban tropical cow.
Oh my, this takes Mendel's P crossing to like the next level insanity.
To the absolute next level. They're mostly a failure, but there was one success story. And this success story was named Ubre Blanca, or White Udder. Now, Ubre Blanca was not just a pretty much half and half, heat-resistant and Holstein-level cow. Mm-hmm. She was a super cow. She set a world record for the most liters of milk produced in a day, 110 liters.
In a day?
In a day.
In one...
And in a 305-day lactation cycle, she produced 24,268.9 liters. And it broke the world record in both of those categories.
My God.
So Ubre Blanca becomes a national hero.
It was just juicy.
So juicy.
Just teeming with milk from all ends.
She was basically a super soaker of milk.
I am so surprised that Castro just didn't marry this heifer.
Oh, he almost did. He put Ubre Blanca on the front page of the Cuban newspaper with daily updates on her health and milk production. And when Ubre Blanca died, he got copies of her DNA and her eggs, put a statue to her, and had her stuffed and displayed. And there was a full-page obituary for her in the paper.
Honestly, again, move over the Notebook, because we've got a true modern romance.
This is a real love story. And even today, Ubre Blanca has been attempted to be cloned, have offspring from the frozen eggs. Cuba is desperate to get its favorite cow back.
They're still trying?
They're still trying.
You think Raul's still...
I think, even though Fidel did abdicate the seat of power in 2008, I'm pretty sure Raul is going to try to bring Ubre Blanca back as a sort of tribute to his lost brother.
Do you think when Raul eventually passes away, that if they can successfully clone, do you think she'll end up taking over the country?
I wouldn't be surprised if there was a puppet government of Ubre Blanca leading the Cuban people.
2025?
It could happen. It could happen, people.
I'm excited.
That's just how popular this cow was.
Wow.
So after the loss of Ubre Blanca, Castro's getting pretty desperate. The milk industry's down after Ubre Blanca carried
Ubre was the milk industry.
She was the milk industry. Single-handedly carried it. And Castro decides, you know what we're going to do? Mini cows.
What's the point of that?
Goes to his scientists and he says, all right, it's too expensive to refrigerate full-sized cows. Mm-hmm. Let's make them small, put them in people's apartments.
How small? Are we talking like...
dog size.
Like yellow lab or like terrier size?
Like yellow labs, like medium dog size. So
still for a cow,
still pretty
freaking small.
And he goes, all right, guys, what we're going to do, everyone's going to have a drawer in their house with fluorescent lights on it and grass, which the cows can eat out of. And then they live in everyone's apartments, so it's refrigerated. And anyone with a basic understanding of genetics knows that this is exactly impossible. Like, no one's ever successfully raised farm animals in their house except for some crazy people out in Australia, probably. So, unfortunately, Cuba's milk industry, even though like they tried to diversify it and really boost it up, it's not working out too well, and I think they're just gonna have to accept that Cuba isn't exactly the environment that you need for a proper milk industry.
See, this is what I love about the dictators, is that he's just completely messing around with this ice cream experiment in the cows. Meanwhile, the Cuban government and population is just dwindling and starving, and there's real problems, and
you've got to keep the cows
but
fed.
I mean, it's hilarious to me because they try and control they get an obsession, and there's got to be some sort of just this insane like complex where this like obsession complex where they find one thing and just fixate on it. You know what I mean? It's just they find that one thing and they just lose track and lose sight of everything. Mm-hmm. Anything logical, per se.
Going after genetic breed of super cows is in itself crazy. Doing so for 30 years, that's insane.
Now, we're talking about Castro and his love of an animal. Mm-hmm. Let's go to a dictator who thought he was an animal.
Oh, I am ready.
All right, so again, let's take the time machine. Let's dial it back to around 1380. To everyone's favorite or most least known ruler, Charles VI. They called him Charles VI the Beloved, and Charles VI Le Fol. Now, for all of you French aficionados out there, fol or fou, as it is now pronounced, means crazy.
So he's both beloved and crazy?
Yes, and this is... I think he is... I call him Charles the Bipolar.
Please elaborate.
Because this man was put on the throne when he was 11 years old. Just because that's how the monarchy works.
I mean, they're given their power to rule by God.
Exactly, by God and by their family. So your dad dies, and you're 11 years old, you are king.
You're up to bat. In the major leagues, right.
I mean, does it matter that it was in the midst of the 100 Years' War, like one of the most brutal, bloody, like important battles of all of France? No, it doesn't matter at all. You're 11 years old. You are now officially king. Now, these Frenchmen weren't that crazy because he wasn't actually, I don't want you people to think he was actually running the country. His uncles, the king's brothers, ended up, really taking reins and taking control. Mm-hmm. Now, this is just almost your Shakespeare's Hamlet, if you will, because once Charles VI grew older, there was the idea that, the uncles weren't banging the mom, but they were taking control, and the son Charles goes, okay, this was temporary, guys. You can go away now.
He still wants his so-called fate.
He goes, this is, the uncles were, were in the seat of power. They were loving it. They were, they were big military guys. They were almost like a cabinet, if you will, because they had their specialties, and they were running the country rather effectively, rather efficiently. They weren't having big blunders. Everything was going okay for people. People were doing fine for being in a monarchy, under a monarchy.
Yeah.
But so then Charles goes, guys, I'm like 17, 18 years old now. I'm practically a man. I just got over puberty. My acne's starting to go away.
Give me
the crown. Give me the crown, guys. My graduation present. Come on. This is my quinceañera. I'm an adult. I'm a man. My bar mitzvah. Give me a country. This is what we do. And so, sure enough, he was able to take rule. He was able to take rule. And he was able to actually rule the country. And so this is where it just gets bad. Where the pressures, he was a young kid. And this is where the pressures of the monarchy really takes its effect. Because he was going mad during this time where his uncles were trying to rule. He tried to kill some of his uncles. He was thinking of these crazy schemes to try and get them out of power. So, again, we have this idea that now he's becoming very, very paranoid of anyone trying to come back into his life and take rule in his uncles. So, one of his famous, like, really first big, like, announcements, or I think things that told people that he was kind of going crazy a little bit, was in August of 1392, when they were going with the army, marching to Brittany in the forest of Le Mans. So Charles, it says he suddenly went mad. No explanation. Suddenly went mad, killed 4 of his own knights, and almost killed his brother, Louis of Orleans. For no reason. People have not been able to explain why. And so that was, historians like to say that was the start of his insanity. And it gets, and that's almost, I would call, given what he does later, normal insanity. Kind of just snapping and trying to kill people.
How much worse can it get?
Oh, it's not, I wouldn't say worse, just way weirder. He was known by the servants as the Wolfman, because he would go through these periods of times where he was convinced that he was a wolf, not a werewolf, but a full wolf, where he could be heard at like 2, 3 in the morning, outside on the balcony on the top of the castle or on the roof, howling like a wolf at the moon. Servants asked him what he was doing. He looks at them, he would snarl, he would growl, or if he would snap back into the human character, he would tell them he was trying to call his fellow wolves. So he would run around the castle on all 4s, barking and growling. He once even ordered that his food be given to him in the way that wolves would eat, meaning he was asked for rabbits and pheasants, like still feathers, still with fur, to just be placed on a plate, which he would then ravenously just dig into with his teeth, with his mouth, like a wolf. And this is where, and then he also went through periods of times where he thought he was made of glass.
Ooh.
Yeah, so
yes.
he was so convinced of this that when anyone would come near him or try and touch him, he would shriek and run away for fear that he would just shatter into 1,000 pieces and die. And during that period of time, he would be cooped up in his room or in his study or wherever, and he would make sure he was alone in solitude. And he wouldn't go up or down stairs for fear of tripping and falling. He would walk extremely slowly. There's a story of him when being greeted by palace guards, or you have the classic thing of the line of soldiers. It took him to go from a line of 50 soldiers lined up in a row. It took him an hour to walk from one end to the other because of the slow pace. And each time looking at the swords, thinking that they were going to break him.
Oh my gosh.
He would have these episodes where he would just start running around the castle. Just like running, like sprinting, not like just in no pattern or order, just running around, trying to tire himself out. and he would see how long it would take for him to just completely just exhaust himself. He was an absolutely crazy man, and this caused the people knew this. This was no secret, and this actually caused several revolts or attempted revolts during his reign. And again, so we see that these simple, strange, weird things clearly impeded his ability to rule a country.
Yeah, when you were talking about this, I was thinking, okay, this makes sense. He's probably like locked up in his castle. It's kind of like an insane asylum, and it would seem even a bit outlandish for an insane asylum. But you have to remember, he had to rule a country at the same time.
Yeah. And that rule, and again, we have towards later in the mix, it says we have this fierce struggle for power between him and his brother. So now all of a sudden, now he's trying to battle for the throne because he's going crazy. His brother's going, buddy, you can't run a country howling at the moon until 3 a.m. You gotta put your pants on, put the pheasant down, and try and help the people of France. Oh, you know, and again, this idea, like we have civil wars going on between the Armagnacs and the House of Valois, and again, meanwhile, during this entire time, he's just thinking he's glass and shrieking and just running around the castle. So now we have, he's dead.
How did he die? Was he poisoned? Or
he was not poisoned. It was one of those things where people were furious at him, but he wasn't your Vlad the Impaler who were killing people.
They didn't really have a reason to kill him?
Well, I mean, he was just crazy. So people weren't as aggressively hateful of him. They just kind of wanted him out of office, but they wanted him off the throne. They were concerned and fearful and angry, but they didn't despise him because, again, he never reportedly killed, other than the Knight story. Mm-hmm. He never went on these big purges, and that was attempted. No one died. And he wasn't a Vlad the Impaler where he never went around just murdering people. He wasn't your Claudius where he was bloodthirsty. He was just wacky and strange and weird. And eventually he ended up losing the throne.
Just people just kind of agreed with his brother?
He ended up losing the throne because he was so crazy, and it disinherited him.
Oh, so
and his offspring.
Did he get kicked out of the palace?
He was kicked out of the palace.
He got voted off the island.
He did get voted off the island.
Did he just spend his remaining days running around in the forest with the other wolves?
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised.
If they might put him out in the garden, say, all right, we'll see you later, have fun with your wolf friends. Your brother's not running the country.
Many say, in the forest of Le Mans, you can still hear his wolf-like cries to this day.
Oh my.
Now, I will like to say, for the people of France, for any of you really emotional, sensitive people out there who are worrying about these poor people of France, Charles VII took over, and he ended up founding the Valois cause, which was something that really benefited the people. And even though things did get much, much worse for France later on, during this small period of time, it was kind of just, a fun time, scary time, maybe. I mean, if you want to describe it as fun, just an interesting time to be a subject of France under this glass, wolfman, Usain Bolt wannabe, crazy guy, Charles VI.
That's certainly so much crazy. I think that we're pretty much exhausted.
I think we have
the list of crazy monarchs, rulers, kings that you really ever need to know about. This just makes you feel so great about the history of the world.
So we've given you definitely some references if you want to, during our modern, if you see any leader, for any political, any political leader or any political climate that you feel is acting in such a way, just know that this stuff has happened before.
Yeah, like someone super obsessed with gold.
Yeah, we have someone who's super obsessed with gold. He is just always very paranoid about people speaking ill. We just got to know that this has happened before, and it's a common trait amongst dictators and a very common trait against like totalitarian leaders. So just you got to just look at history, see what's happened before, and just like the subjects of Charles VI's France, you just got to kind of ride it out, try and revolt maybe.
Yeah, if you see a big cast iron pan coming out on the floor of Congress, don't be surprised, but don't let it go unnoticed.
Yeah, exactly. Be wary. Be cautious. Be vigilant.
Stay woke, America. This has been Partially Scientific. We'll be seeing you next week when we cover I don't know, I haven't come up with a topic yet.